Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Curt Witcher. I manage the Genealogy Center here at the Allen County Public Library, and I have just an awesome team of people that work with me in the Genealogy Center. We're here to serve you. We want your research to be enjoyable and to be successful. These Wednesdays with Witcher was an idea we hatched maybe 3 years ago now, I believe. And again, they're just meant to be times when we can spend a few moments musing. And I hope that they're at least a little bit inspiring. I hope that it causes you to have maybe some mini aha moments about, I didn't think of that, or I should have checked on that, or now this puts my family history musings, my family history activities in a whole new context. If I accomplish that, if we accomplish that together, that'll be a great thing. I hope the first hours, the first day of Family History Month has been a good one for you. And so let's get started with our first Wednesdays with Witcher here. I'm going to bring up my sharing here, and you should see my screen. What I want to focus on today is the power of story revisited. I know that I have been on this really quest over the last several years to really emphasize amongst all of us, myself, you, and those that we encounter many, many, many times, to emphasize with us about how important story is and how powerful story is. I know some of you may say, oh my gosh, here he goes again, but it could be, should be a good time to review why we care about story. And I believe why we do family history, right? So the power of story revisited. As the last line on the slide says, it is a big deal. So literally for centuries, we as humans have been communicating, have been trying to tell our stories. How do we know this? Because we can look on cave walls from centuries, millennia ago, and find our ancestors trying to communicate, probably sharing stories with each other contemporarily, and then possibly, we don't know for sure, their aspirations of leaving a story behind for those who come after them. And oh my goodness, isn't that what we as family historians, as we as genealogists want to do, try to do, right? Is to leave a story for those who come behind us. So I want to accomplish or touch on four things today. I want us to value inspiration. So let's ramp up valuing inspiration. And I believe stories do that for us. They help us step up to the next level in valuing inspiration. Stories, we can use stories for changing young people's lives. Stories do change young people's lives. Stories help us find our voices so we can give our voices. We don't emphasize this enough, and so we'll spend a few moments with my musings on that. And fourth and finally, how stories are impacting our waning years and our legacy. It's really, really, really important. So valuing inspiration, changing young people's lives, finding our voices so we can give our voices, and impacting our waning years and legacy. So I want to start, of course, with a story. This made national news earlier this year. Many of you have probably seen, heard this. It made national television news. A couple was getting married, and the bride lost her father when she was just 7 years old. Sometime before her father passed, they were hiking and they found butterflies, and it was just a special father-daughter moment that they shared. And butterflies always had a special part, place, emotion, touchstone in her life. after her father passed, again when she was just 7 years old, when they would be out in the yard or out hiking, out in nature. She always had an affinity for butterflies, and she always thought when she saw monarchs that that was her father stopping by to say hi. So pretty amazing. So at her wedding, of course, they wanted to release butterflies, specifically monarch butterflies, and they released about 50 of them. And as you remember from the newscasts that made many different networks, they expected the butterflies to fly away, as all of us would, right? They expected the butterflies to fly away, and they didn't. They hung around through the wedding ceremony, and they mostly lit on her. One lit on the boutonniere that her husband was wearing, and they didn't just stay for the ceremony. As you may recall from the news clips, they hung around all afternoon and all evening. And it was a special moment for her. She believes, not just believed, but believes her father was there. Her father was there at her wedding, and he was telling her that through these butterflies. What a story, right? I'm going to ask you a question, and no, you don't have to send us an email with your answer. Feel free if you want to, but this is kind of a rhetorical question. When, whether you heard that story previously or not, whether you saw it on a network television channel or not, when you just heard that story, whether for the 50th time or the first time, what happened? What happened in your mind? Did you think of something else in your life that happened that was possibly, maybe a touchstone from the past? Did you think about previous weddings that you've participated in? Did you think about your own wedding? Did you think about a wedding you hope for in the future? What did you think about? I'm betting, not being a betting person, of course, I'm betting that everyone had more than a few thoughts. That is the beginning, I believe, my friends, of the power of story, right? We heard a story, two people we don't know, with an event we didn't participate in directly, and it caused our brains to think. And you might say to yourself, Curt, that's really not a big deal. Ah, but it is kind of a big deal. Scientists have been studying this for years, and they tell us, and think about the gravity of this statement. They tell us that no other human activity, let's pause there. All the human activities we've been involved with since we can remember, no other human activity lights up more of the brain than story. Isn't that amazing? I think it's amazing. Maybe I'm just more pedestrian, more of a simple mind, but I think that's amazing. When we've been scared, we think, oh, our brain's just totally on overdrive. No, when we listen and participate in stories, actually more of our brain is lit up, more of our brain is participating. If any of us have had a near-death experience, we think, oh, our brain's on fire there. Well, yes, it may be, but story still lights up, interacts with, engages more of the brain. To me, simpleton or not, I think that's the power of story. It's really, really powerful. So maybe a little inspiration to continue to find our family stories, and as we'll touch upon in a moment, record our family stories. So stories are so very important for all of us because they help embed positive memories, but especially for children. So educators, sociologists, and psychologists are all beginning to publish findings of studies that they have done and are currently engaged in that try to study and understand how stories impact young people from literally pre-birth to high school, graduating high school, college. And they have found Stories help embed positive memories. To me, just that reason would be reason enough to, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to intentionally and deliberately, consistently tell stories to my children, to my grandchildren, to other people's children, to young people. Stories help embed positive memories. The next couple slides are really impressive to me. Sociologists and educators tell us that knowing something about their family story, knowing the story of their nuclear family, their extended family, their neighborhood families, plural, the number one predictor of a child's emotional well-being. I'm going to say this question a few times. Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want your child, your neighbor's child, your son and daughter's child to be emotionally well? Knowing their stories, the number one predictor of a child's emotional well-being. Not their smart device, not the latest clothes, tennis shoes, not the latest, sportswear, not the best whatever party, birthday party, etc. Number one predictor, stories. It's a very strong predictor of a child's overall happiness. So well-being, happiness, knowing their stories. A child knowing her or his story is a very strong predictor of children's belief that they can affect the world around them in good and positive ways. I think that's called hope, right? Heartfelt, heart embraced, mind embraced hope. I can make a difference. I do matter. I am somebody. How do I know I'm somebody? I have a story. I come from somewhere. I matter. I'm always impressed by things that we can do without a lot of effort or cost that can have such an amazing impact. And I really believe that story is one of those, a very strong predictor of children's belief that they can affect the world in good and positive ways. This is stunning as well. Children who know more about their family's stories are better able to bounce back from tragedies. Oh my goodness. We have, in the last several years, from COVID through strife around the world to natural disasters, oh my gosh, have we had a lot of tragedies in our world, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our states, in our countries. Children who know more about their family stories are better able to bounce back from tragedies. Again, I think it's that hope component, right? Children who know more about their family stories are more accepting of diversity and change at every level. What do we know? We've heard it so much that we're probably really sick of hearing it, but what do we know? The only constant in life, change. So if we can have something, do something that will make our young people more accepting of change, why wouldn't we want to do that? If we can help our young people accept diversity, different doesn't mean wrong. Different just means different. Wouldn't that be neat if our young people could start at that baseline and accept diversity, accept change at every level? So stories really are powerful. Stories really are meaningful in our lives, in our young people's lives. So I've heard this cited a number of times. I haven't been able to find the primary source of this saying, so I'm going to preface it that way, but I'm going to share it with you that it has been said by educators and sociologists, or at least it has been attributed to them, that children who know just the four names of their grandparents, paternal, grandmother, grandfather, paternal, grandmother, grandfather, maternal, paternal, grandmother, grandfather. Just their names, not their birth dates, not their death dates, not their marriage dates, not what they did, where they went to school, not whether they had a good life or a hard life, not if they had any strife, just their names. Those children, and oh my gosh, I could probably be 5 minutes detailing the long list of attributes. Those children make friends easier. They test higher in school. They lead their classes in a variety of ways more frequently and more consistently than their fellow classmates who don't know their four grandparents' names. What would those leadership things be? Well, sometimes it's class president. Sometimes it's the person who's in charge of helping people cross the street. We used to call it the safety patrol. Sometimes it's being in a cheer squad leader. Maybe it's jazz band leader. Maybe it's some other academic leader role for an academic bowl. Children who know, young people who know just the four names of their grandparents tend to be higher in their graduating class, tend to have leadership roles in fraternities and sororities, tend to get better jobs faster, tend to excel in whatever their employment is, whether it's farmer, whether it's IT engineer, whether it's scientist, whether it's teacher and educator. So there's something there, I believe, from the longitudinal studies that educators and sociologists and psychologists are making. It's amazing that knowing just their names makes them excel, makes them understand and appreciate I am somebody and I can do something. It's absolutely amazing. At least to me, it's amazing. And it begs, I believe, for us to share our stories. So commit to the family history research that we're doing, which is finding, preserving, and presenting our stories. Knowing their stories brings out our young people's best selves. And probably, but I can't guarantee it, probably for the last time, I'll say, who wouldn't want that for their children? So knowing their stories brings out their best possible selves. So I hope I have at least helped you muse upon, gosh, it is kind of sort of maybe important that our young people know their family's stories. So I'm going to move to the middle of the three major points, the third of the four things I said we would talk about. I say this intentionally, and I do mean to sound alarmist. A crisis in our midst. And what is that crisis in our midst? We are not taking time to write or record our stories, our living memory, and our families' stories. Three separate things. We're really, to use the classroom analogy, we're really very much failing at that. We see here in the Genealogy Center, and it's not a criticism, it's just we want to kind of shine a light on this. I want to, if I can use the drastic phrase, sound the alarm that we're not doing well when it comes to our stories. So your life, what have you left as far as a writing, a recording, whether audio and or video or some other type of storage medium? What of your life have you left for your children or your cousins or nephews and nieces or grandnephews and nieces? Will everything be gone when the renewal on your smartphone expires, when your tree on Ancestry kind of goes away when you go away? And are your stories really even there? Will anyone know about my life or your life after we're gone if we haven't taken the time to write our stories? Many of us don't do that. I can tell, and my colleagues can tell by how and what the donations we receive, how we receive the donations, and what are the donations that we receive. We receive a cacophony of jumbled papers. High percentage are copies of census records, copies off of Ancestry, copies of Family Search, copies of a vital record, copies of a passenger list. Did I say copies? Yeah, they're copies of stuff that they have found. It would take many moments, if not hours, if not days, weeks, and months to put together a story. We're great at gathering. We're great hunters and gatherers. We hunt for information and we gather it. We capture it and we never put it together. We don't tell the story. We don't connect the documents. We don't connect the dots. We don't connect the documents. Many of us have a lot of information about our lives and our families' lives, our children, our nephews and nieces, our cousins, first, second, third, once, twice, thrice removed. All the things about our life and all the things we know about our family that we carry around in this great encyclopedia called our mind. What happens to our living memory when we're gone? Poof, in an instant, it's gone. Our living memory's gone unless we do something intentional to record it. Many of us are not doing it. I would dare say that high 80% people have not taken an intentional moment or made an intentional plan to record living memory. And just remember, a plan is just that, a plan, unless you execute it. And then how many of us have intentionally written our families' stories? So our personal stories, our living memory, what we hold in that great encyclopedia of our mind, and our family stories. Oh my goodness, we are not doing that. If story is really important, if story benefits our young people, then we have to be doing that. It's not like, yeah, it would be a nice thing to do. I'm going to offer to you today. It's an obligation for us to do that. So we know about the human touch. We know how special with loved ones and family members the human touch is. We can continue that touch by writing our stories. If we don't, that touch will die when we die, just to be totally transparent and frank about it. I want to tell you one more story. This is a story of my oldest son, really bright. Of course, you'd expect his father to say that, but a bright, caring individual, thinks very deeply about a lot of things. And so when he decided that he wanted to propose to his now wife of several years, he wanted an authentic ring, an authentic engagement ring, but he didn't want to make the decision for her. He wanted to surprise her. He wanted to surprise her with a real piece of jewelry, but he didn't want to pick their wedding set for them. So what did he do? He asked his mother, my wife, do you have an extra like engagement ring around? And lo and behold, my wife did take the wedding set off of her mother's fingers when she died, when she passed after the showing. And my oldest son came down and got the engagement ring and proposed to his wife. And of course, he had it cleaned up and it really looked amazing. It looked better than it ever had looked for years and years and years. Cleaned it up, it just sparkled like crazy. And the beautiful thing is, he was able to surprise her. He was able to surprise her with a real piece of jewelry, and she could then, with him, decide what their wedding set would be. She loved the engagement ring that came off of Mark's grandmother's finger. And that's what she wanted for her engagement ring. So kind of silver and gold, touching skin across 3 generations. That's pretty special. And I won't ask you what you are thinking during that story. So we need to continue to record the stories of our lives. The third and final thing I want to muse on this afternoon is, again, the power of story and the stories that we can tell around the photographs in our lives. So Vivid Pics, which is a wonderful, relatively new, but not so new anymore, company that started. They have a great piece of software, Vivid Pics, highly recommended. And they've done some work with the National Institute for Dementia Studies about this that you see on the screen, photoreminiscence therapy. How can we use photographs to trigger reminiscences, and what will that do to benefit our family members in their waning years, particularly and especially those on the dementia spectrum? It's been fascinating to watch that research. And oh my goodness, it is so amazing. So Vivid Pics really led out on this with what they call a memory station. So they have a neat little scanner that will scan photographs, will give you several different options for enhancing faded photographs. And then they decided to partner with another organization to see if they couldn't get an app where you could actually talk into this app and marry that articulation to an image as part of the photograph's metadata. So working with their engineers, working with the National Institute for Dementia Education and Dementia Studies, they have discovered some pretty neat things. These are pretty impressive. My mother is struggling in a memory care unit at this very moment. So these are personal, but I think beyond that, they are impressive for any of us who have family members on the dementia spectrum or who know people on the dementia spectrum. These 4 things to me are really impressive. Photoreminiscence therapy, using photographs and talking about the photographs, maybe even marrying an audio file to the photograph, to the digital photograph. National Institute for Dementia Education has said they are finding it slows memory regression. Who wouldn't want that for our family members on the more mature side of life? It restores better speech, which we know, those of us who have family members on the dementia spectrum, that becomes an issue. It increases positive outlook. Oh my goodness. Sometimes life isn't fun, isn't enjoyable, is a struggle for those who know that something isn't quite right, that something isn't quite there like it used to be. And the last point, improves care compliance. Care compliance, family members suggesting good, positive things to do, and healthcare professionals asking for compliance from their residents, their patients, on doing things that will help extend a better life for them, not just extend life. So excited about, not only does story help our young people, not only should story inspire us to record and pass along our stories and our living memory, story also helps us and our loved ones, helps care for those, helps improve the lives of those at the end of life's continuum. So the power of story, it really is a real thing. And I hope that my musings with you this afternoon have, in some small way, convinced you yet again that it is an important thing for us to pay attention to. On the quote wall here at the Allen County Public Library, there's a quote wall that runs about half the length of our block-long main library here. And a section of the quote wall is devoted to family history, heritage type sayings. And I wanted to leave you this afternoon with this very, very, I'm going to use the word simple, although it's the second word in the quote. This very simple but powerful quote. Alice Walker is quoted as having said, "How simple a thing it seems to me that to know ourselves as we are, we must know our mothers' names." And I would extend that to say that knowing our mother's names for us as family historians, as genealogists, as people embracing Family History Month, knowing our mother's names means that we want to seek and find and present our mother's stories and present all of our mother's stories and everyone else in our families. I'm going to stop my screen share now and just thank you again for your time this afternoon. For a copy of the chat, one of my colleagues, Kate, has just put something in the chat. You can send an email to genealogy@acpl.info and think carefully and joyfully about the opportunities we have, so many opportunities to tell our stories. Thanks so much.